Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to picture a scenario. It's one you might have lived through or, at least heard horror stories about from a slightly traumatized relative.
Oh, I think we all have one of those stories.
Right. You're on vacation, you've got a drink with a little umbrella in it, the sun is shining, your guard is way, way down. And then a very friendly person in a branded polo shirt approaches you and asks a simple disarming question. Do you have 90 minutes to hear about a way to vacation like a millionaire for the rest of your life?
And just like that, the sun goes behind a cloud. You know exactly where this is going.
You feel that pit in your stomach. Because we are talking about the T word.
Timeshare.
Timeshares.
Yeah.
Or as they like to call it now, vacation ownership or club membership.
Yeah.
But we know what it is.
We do. And it is arguably the most loaded word in the entire travel industry. It carries immediate cultural baggage.
It really does.
You hear timeshare, and you don't think of beaches. You think of aggressive sales tactics, guys in cheap suits, and that overwhelming feeling of being trapped in a windowless room until you sign a check just to make it all stop.
It has a reputation right up there with used car sales and, multi-level marketing schemes.
For sure. But here's the thing, and this is why we wanted to dig into this specific stack of research today.
Right.
It is also a massive multi-billion-dollar industry that millions of people actually participate in and in some cases genuinely enjoy.
That's the part that's so fascinating.
It is. So our mission today isn't just to bash the industry, although believe me, we are going to talk about the horror stories and the scams.
Oh, we're getting to that.
We are. But we want to look at the machinery. We need to strip away the stigma for a minute and look at the engine. What is a timeshare legally?
Exactly.
How did it morph from what was actually a very friendly, logical European concept into this massive, controversial industry? And critically, we need to look at the math. Because at the end of the day, a timeshare isn't just a vacation.
No.
It is a complex financial product that you happen to sleep in.
That is a terrifying way to put it,
Yeah.
but it seems completely accurate based on these documents. So let's start with the absolute basics, just so we are all on the same page before we get into the wild history. When we say timeshare, what are we actually defining?
At its core, stripped of all the marketing gloss, a timeshare is a property with a divided form of ownership or use rights. That is the legal definition.
Okay.
Usually we are talking about resort condominium units, apartments, essentially. But instead of one person owning that unit 100% of the time, the usage is it's sliced up.
Right.
Multiple parties hold rights to use that same accommodation, and each owner is allotted a specific period of time, usually a week.
So practically speaking, instead of me buying a vacation home in Florida that just sits empty for 50 weeks a year while I'm working.
Right, which most people can't afford anyway.
Exactly. Instead, 50 people buy it and we each take a turn.
Precisely. It is an efficiency model. In theory, it eliminates waste. Why pay for a house that is empty 90% of the time? But as we are going to see, the way you hold that right, whether you own the actual dirt or just a license to use it, that changes the entire legal landscape.
And looking at the scope of what we have to cover,
Yeah.
it is fascinating. We have everything from the psychological tricks used in the sales tour
Oh, that's a whole segment?
to the specifics of the resale market, which is a whole other beast.
It is. We're going to look at the different flavors of ownership, like deeded versus right to use. We'll talk about the major players who legitimize the industry, the Disneys and the Marriotts.
Right.
And we have to talk about the law. Because this industry was so wild in the beginning, specific laws had to be written just to protect consumers from the high-pressure environment.
That's a wild ride. But let's go back to the beginning, because this was the biggest surprise for me in the research. I always assumed this was some corporate scheme cooked up in a boardroom in the 70s to squeeze money out of tourists.
That's what everyone thinks.
But it actually started way more innocently than that, didn't it?
It really did. It didn't start as a corporate scheme at all. It started in Europe, specifically in the UK, and then it kind of expanded onto the continent in early 1960s.
The 60s.
The 60s. And they didn't call it timeshare back then. It was vacation home sharing.
Vacation home sharing. That sounds so pleasant, like something you do with your neighbors.
That is exactly what it was. The original model was typically for families, friends, extended family, or just neighbors. They would get together and jointly purchase a vacation cottage.
Okay, so 4 families, 1 house. Simple enough.
Right. And the math was simple. There are 4 seasons in a year, so each family had exclusive use of the property for one of the 4 seasons.
That seems remarkably fair. And logical.
It was. And to keep it fair, they would rotate the seasons annually. So if you had spring this year, you'd get summer next year, and so on. That way, everyone eventually got a turn at the prime vacation slots.
I love that. It relies entirely on cooperation.
And that was the key. And also the limitation. It relied entirely on trust. There was no property manager. There was no homeowners association.
Just a handshake deal.
Pretty much. Just four families sharing the keys and the bills. But as with many utopian ideas, reality set in. Most families couldn't actually vacation for a full season. I mean, who has 3 months of vacation time?
Nobody. Right. So the house sits empty for weeks at a time, even though technically someone's season is happening.
Exactly. The properties were often vacant for long periods, or, imagine the conflict. Family A leaves the place a mess, and Family B arrives for their turn and has to clean up.
Yeah. So trust breaks down pretty quick.
The inefficiency crept back in. So British businesses looked at this and thought, we can professionalize this. They decided to slice the pie thinner.
Thinner than 4 seasons?
Much thinner. Instead of 4 seasons, why not 50 weeks?
50 weeks, not 52.
Right. There are 52 weeks in a year. They divided the resort room into 150th ownerships. They kept 2 weeks aside for maintenance and repairs, which is actually a very smart operational detail that the 4 families lacked. And they sold the other 50.
Okay, so now you have 50 owners for 1 unit. That's a lot of cats to herd. You can't just leave the key under the mat for that.
No, you can't. And that's where the maintenance fee was born. Since you can't rely on 50 strangers to come in and fix the roof or mow the lawn, the business charges each owner a fee to cover those operational costs.
The dreaded maintenance fee.
The birth of it. It took about a decade for this to really smooth out in Europe, but eventually it became a successful business venture.
And then it crossed the Atlantic, 1974.
1974?
The United States. This is where things really started to accelerate, right?
This is the pivotal moment for the American market. 1974, a company called Caribbean International Corporation, or CIC, based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They are really the granddaddies of the U.S. timeshare model.
But they weren't selling real estate at first, were they? The documents say something different.
No, and this is a crucial distinction. They offered what they called a vacation license.
A license? Like a driver's license. What does that even mean?
It's a similar concept. You didn't own the room. You had a license to use the room for a period of 25 years.
So it had an expiration date.
A hard expiration date. CIC owned 2 resorts, one in St. Croix and one in St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Okay, so I pay them some money, and for 25 years I get to go to the Virgin Islands. What was the pitch? Why would I do that instead of just, booking a hotel?
The pitch was all about inflation. This is the aha moment for the sales strategy. You have to remember the economic context of the mid-1970s. Inflation was a real, tangible fear for people. Prices were going up fast, so CIC broke down the math.
Walk us through that math.
Okay, so you pay the purchase price for the license up front. Then the contract stated you only had 2 extra charges. You had to pay a $15 per diem, that's per night, for the room.
$15.
$15. And that rate was frozen for the life of the contract.
Frozen. For 25 years.
For 25 years, plus a small $25 switching fee if you wanted to swap resorts. The bet they were asking you to make was this. They projected that hotel rates, which were maybe $30 or $40 at the time, were going to skyrocket to over $100 a night over the next 25 years.
So they're selling financial security. They're saying, lock in your vacation costs now at 1974 prices, and in 1990, you'll be laughing at everyone paying full price.
That's the entire pitch. Exactly. And here is the kicker.
Wow.
They were right.
They were. The math actually worked out.
It did. By 1999, which would have been the end of those 25-year contracts, inflation in the U.S. had boosted the per diem cost of a comparable room to about $52 or more. So if you were locked in at $15, you were saving significant money every single night.
That's fascinating. So the early adopters actually got a good deal.
In that specific inflation hedge sense, yes. It validated the initial savings assumption. But of course, the industry saw this and realized there was enormous profit to be made. Entrepreneurs figured out they could sell the same room 52 times. In the mid-70s, the average price was about $3,500 per week.
So wait, do the math on that. 3,500 times 50 weeks?
Yeah.
That's $175,000 for a single condo unit.
In 1975, money.
Wow.
Precisely. The margins were astronomical, and naturally, when there is that much money flying around, things got a little cowboy.
The Wild West.
That's when the Florida Real Estate Commission stepped in. They looked at these vacation licenses and decided they needed to be regulated like real estate.
Because people were just handing over thousands of dollars for a promise to use a building in the Caribbean. I can see the problem.
Right. If the company went bust, your license was just a worthless piece of paper. So Florida enacted legislation to make them fee-simple ownership transactions.
Fee simple. That's a legal term. What does that mean for the buyer?
It means you actually own a slice of the real estate. You own the dirt, or at least a fraction of it. This shifted the model significantly. It mandated the creation of homeowners associations, HOAs, and formalized those maintenance fees. It gave the consumer more protection because they held a deed, but it also locked them into the perpetual responsibilities of property ownership.
Which brings us neatly to the next segment. Because ownership in the timeshare world isn't always straightforward. We have these different flavors of contracts. You mentioned fee simple or deeded, but there's also right to use. Let's unpack this. Do you actually own the dirt or not?
This is the first thing you have to check if you are ever looking at a contract. The legal difference is absolutely huge.
Okay, let's start with the deeded contract. This is the fee simple one we were just talking about.
Yes. A deeded contract is real property. It's fractional ownership. Just like buying a house, you get a deed recorded in the public record.
So it's legally mine.
Legally yours. Because it is real property, you can essentially do whatever you want with it. You can use it, you can rent it out, you can give it away to a friend, you can leave it to your heirs in your will, or you can try to sell it.
And because it's real estate, does that mean I'm paying property taxes on it?
It does. You are liable for your portion of the real estate taxes. Usually these are collected as part of the maintenance fees, but it also means there is potential for tax deductibility, depending on your jurisdiction and your personal tax laws.
Okay, that sounds secure at least. But there's a nuance here too. I saw it in the notes. Leasehold deeds.
Right. You see this more in places like the UK or Hawaii sometimes. A leasehold deed offers ownership, but for a fixed period, say 99 years. After that 99 years is up, the ownership reverts to the freeholder, the person who actually owns the land underneath.
So it's ownership, but with an expiration date, effectively. A very long one, but still.
Exactly. It's not perpetual.
Got it. Now, compare that to the right to use or RTU contract. This sounds more like that original 1974 license.
It is very similar. With a right-to-use contract, you do not own the dirt. The developer retains ownership of the property. You are just signing a contract that gives you the right to use the property for a specific number of years, maybe 10, 20, or 50 years.
And when the contract expires,
your rights evaporate. You walk away with nothing.
That sounds less good.
It depends on your goals, but it definitely carries different and, I would argue, bigger risks. The biggest risk is that it often takes the form of a club membership. If the controlling company goes under, or if they sell the property to a developer who wants to turn it into regular condos,
your right to use could just vanish.
It might be lost, yeah.
Oh, wait, so I could pay $20,000 for a 20-year right to use, and in year 5 the company goes bankrupt, and I'm just out.
It depends heavily on the local laws and the specific contract, but yes, that is the nightmare scenario. This is particularly common in Mexico.
Why Mexico specifically?
Because the Mexican Constitution has restrictions on foreign ownership of land near the coast and borders. So, for a long time, the only way for a U.S. citizen to buy a timeshare in Cabo or Cancun was through a right to use or a trust mechanism. You aren't buying the real estate directly.
That is a crucial detail to know. Okay,
Yeah.
so we have the legal structure deeded versus right to use, but then we have the schedule structure. How do they decide when I get to go? Because everybody wants Christmas week or the 4th of July.
This is where the calendar systems come in. The oldest and most rigid system is fixed week ownership.
This is what my grandparents had. You own week 51.
Exactly. The resort has a calendar, usually starting in January. Week 51 is typically Christmas week. If you own week 51, you go that week every single year.
Great for routine.
Fantastic for routine. You know exactly when your vacation is. But it's terrible for flexibility. If your cousin is getting married that week, or you just want to go skiing in February instead, you're out of luck unless you can trade it somehow.
So to solve that, they invented floating week ownership.
Right. In this model, you might buy a summer week. You don't own a specific date. You own the right to book any one week within the summer window.
That sounds better, more flexible.
In theory. But the problem is competition. If there are 100 owners who all bought summer weeks, and everyone wants the week of July 4th,
Not everyone is going to get it.
exactly, you have to call the second the booking window opens and compete with your fellow owners.
So it's like trying to buy Taylor Swift tickets.
A little bit, yes. A very specific vacation-based version of that. And then you have rotating or flex week ownership. This was an attempt to be fair. The weeks rotate forward or backward yearly. So you have week 25 this year, week 26 next year.
So eventually, everyone gets the prime weeks.
Yes, but as the source notes, while it is fair, it is not actually flexible. You don't get to choose, you just get what the calendar gives you that year.
It seems like every solution just creates a new problem. Fixed is too rigid, floating is too competitive.
Which brings us to the big revolution, the early 90s. Enter the mouse, Disney. In 1991, the Disney Vacation Club, or DVC, really changed the game. They popularized the points system.
I feel like almost everyone uses points now. How did Disney change the structure so drastically?
Disney was clever. They combined a deeded interest with a points system. So legally, you still have a real property interest, which gives you that security. You own a piece of it.
So you have the deed.
You have the deed. But instead of buying a week, you buy an annual allotment of vacation points.
So the points are like a currency.
Exactly. That's the best way to think of it. It's vacation currency. Every night at every resort has a price tag in points. A studio apartment on a Tuesday in October might cost 10 points a night. A 3-bedroom villa on New Year's Eve might cost 100 points a night.
That offers massive flexibility.
It does. You can spend your points on different unit sizes. Maybe one year it's just you and your spouse, you get a studio. The next year you bring the whole family and get a 3-bedroom. You can change resorts, change times of year. And crucially, BVC introduced banking and borrowing.
Banking and borrowing. What's
If you don't use all your points this year, you can bank them to use next year. So you have a bigger pool of points for a longer trip. Or if you want a really big vacation this year, you can borrow points from next year's allotment.
That really does solve the rigidity problem. It feels much more modern.
It does, and that's why the entire industry adopted it. Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt, Wyndham, they all moved toward this points-based model. It allows for fractional stays, too. You don't have to stay a full week. You can stay for 3 days if that's all you want.
There's a catch, right? There's always a catch.
The catch is complexity and, well, points inflation. The points chart determines the value of your currency. If the resort decides to reallocate the points chart next year, your vacation might cost more points than it did this year.
Effectively devaluing my ownership.
Right. So you have to keep buying more points to stay in the same place at the same time.
In some systems, yes, that can happen.
Okay, so we know what they are. Now let's talk about how they get you to buy them. Because the timeshare presentation it's legendary. It's a cultural trope for a reason.
It is theater, high-stakes, psychological theater. And it has been refined over decades to be incredibly effective.
Let's walk through the tour. It usually starts with bait.
Always. You're on vacation, maybe in Vegas or Orlando. You see a booth offering free show tickets or deeply discounted Disney tickets or a $100 dinner voucher. All you have to do is give them 90 minutes of your time.
90 minutes. I've never heard of one actually lasting 90 minutes. The stories are always 4, 5, 6 hours long.
It rarely does. So you accept the bait, you arrive at the resort, you are taken to a hospitality room. This is the setup. There's coffee, maybe some snacks. It's comfortable. They want your defenses down.
Right.
You are assigned a tour guide. Now, this person might be a licensed real estate agent, or they might just be a guide.
And they are your new best friend.
Your new best friend. They want to know about your family, your dreams, your vacations. Then comes the podium. A speaker welcomes everyone, usually shows a slick promotional video with drone shots of beaches and happy families.
Then the physical tour.
Right. They take you out to see the units. And they are not going to show you the standard unit. They are going to show you the best unit that fits your family's needs or, slightly exceeds them. They want you to visualize yourself in that space.
Picture your family here for Christmas.
Exactly. And then you go back to the table. And this is where the trap snaps shut.
The dream question. This is a classic tactic. They hand you an exchange book, a massive, glossy catalog of resorts from RCI or Interval International, and they ask, where would you like to visit?
And you say, I've always wanted to go to Hawaii, or I want to ski in the Alps.
And boom, the entire pitch is now tailored to that answer. They aren't selling you a condo in Orlando anymore. They are selling you that ski trip to the Alps. They're selling the dream of global travel.
And then comes the pressure.
The pressure is intense. The defining characteristic of timeshare sales is the buy today mandate.
Why today? Why can't I go home and think about it for a week?
They will tell you that the discounted price or the special interest rate is only authorized for today. The source notes explicitly. This is untrue. It is a fabrication to force urgency.
Because if you leave the room, the spell is broken.
That's it. They know that once you walk out that door and you Google timeshare resale value, you will never, ever come back.
So what happens if you say no? I mean, really stick to your guns.
You meet the TO.
The TO, what's a TO?
The takeover man, or the sales manager. If the initial guide can't close you, they call in the boss. This is the good cop, bad cop routine, or sometimes good cop, better cop.
What does the TO do that's different?
They come in with a whole new set of incentives. Oh, you know what? We actually have a traded-in unit from another owner that just came available. It's half the price. Or I can authorize a special developer discount just for you.
So they just keep chipping away at the price.
They will barrage you with lower and lower price points until you either buy or you make it absolutely physically clear you are leaving.
Sounds exhausting.
It is designed to be exhausting. They wear you down until signing a check feels easier than saying no one more time.
And that leads us to the hangover, the economics. You've signed the papers, you own the timeshare. Was it a good financial decision?
The developers will argue yes. Their argument is rent versus own. They say, look, you are going to vacation anyway. Hotel rates always go up. If you buy this, you are locking in your costs. Ideally, over 20 years, the timeshare is cheaper.
But that math leaves out some pretty big numbers.
Huge numbers. First, the maintenance fees. These are perpetual. They never go away, and they almost always go up, often faster than inflation. They include property taxes, insurance, upkeep, management salaries, everything.
And the mortgage interest if you financed it.
If you finance the purchase through the developer, and most people do, interest rates on timeshares are notoriously high, often 10 to 18%. That alone destroys the value proposition right there. But the real killer is the depreciation cliff.
How bad is it?
It is catastrophic. A new car loses maybe 20% of its value when you drive it off the lot. A timeshare can lose 50 to 90% of its value the moment the rescission period ends.
90%. You mean I could pay $50,000 and the next week it's worth $5,000?
In many cases, yes. If you look at eBay or timeshare resale sites, you will see people selling timeshares for $1. Literally $1.
Why? Why would anyone sell something they paid $20,000, $30,000 for $1?
To get out of the maintenance fees. The asset has become a liability. The $1 is just the legal consideration for the contract. They just want the bleeding to stop.
That is sobering. But surely there are exceptions. What about the big brands?
There are rare exceptions. High-demand weeks like Christmas in Aspen or ski season in prime locations or large penthouses in top-tier brands like Disney or Marriott, they might hold some value.
So Disney is different.
Disney Vacation Club, for example, has a fairly robust resale market where you might get 50 to 60% of your money back, maybe more depending on when you bought. But that is the outlier, not the rule.
Now, speaking of resale, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's say I'm smart and I find a cheap timeshare on eBay. A Marriott for $500. Can I just buy it and I'm good to go?
Maybe, but you have to get past the ROFR.
ROFR.
Another acronym.
Right, a first refusal. This is a fascinating mechanism. Many major developers, Disney, Hilton, Marriott, write a clause into the contract. It says that if you want to sell your timeshare to a third party, you must first send the contract to the developer.
And they can say no.
They can step in and match the price. Yeah. So if you agree to sell your Disney points to me for $50 a point, which is way below the retail market,
Disney can say, no, wait.
they can say, no, we will buy it for $50 a point instead.
And they take it.
Why would they do that?
2 reasons. 1, to acquire inventory cheaply that they can then turn around and resell to a new buyer at full retail price. 2, and more importantly, to maintain a price floor. If people see timeshares selling for $1, it destroys the perception of value for the new buyers in the sales center. By scooping up the lowball offers, they keep the resale market artificially propped up.
That is devious and brilliant.
It is. If they exercise the ROFR, they become the owner, they pay the HOA fees to themselves, essentially, and they put it back on the shelf to sell for thousands more.
What about other restrictions? I read about Holiday Inn Club Vacations having some strict rules for resale buyers.
Yes, developers hate the resale market because it competes with them. It's that simple. So they penalize resale buyers. With Holiday Inn Club vacations, for example, if you buy resale, you might lose the ability to use your points at other resorts.
So you're stuck.
You are locked into your home resort only. It significantly degrades the product you thought you were buying.
So you buy a second-class version of the ownership.
Ex-
We have to talk about the scams. Because if there are people desperate to sell, there's sharks circling them.
The exit industry. This is the dark underbelly of the whole thing. You have owners who are desperate to get out of their fees. They're often elderly, on a fixed income. And scammers know this.
How does it work?
They cold call owners and say, "We have a buyer for your unit. They are willing to pay $15,000. We just need you to wire us $2,000 for the closing cost taxes transfer fees."
And the buyer doesn't exist.
The buyer never exists. The money just vanishes into an offshore account.
The notes mention a specific bust in Spain.
Yes, in 2017, it was a huge case. Spanish police arrested 35 people on the Costa del Sol. They had an operation that made an estimated 11 million pounds. That's pounds, so even more in dollars, scamming 500 victims.
That's awful.
It's a massive industry of fraud built on the despair of people trying to exit their contracts.
It's tragic. So let's pivot to something that's supposed to be a benefit, the exchange. This is the dream they sell you in that room. Buy in Orlando, travel the world. How does the trading actually work with companies like RCI and Interval International?
The concept is great. You deposit your week into the pot and you pull out a week somewhere else. RCI and 2 are the giants here. They have over 7,000 resorts combined in their networks.
But it's not a straight one-for-one trade, is it? I can't just swap my week for any other week in the book.
No, absolutely not. It's governed by trading power. It's pure supply and demand.
Give us an example.
Okay, take the example from the source text. Palm Springs, California, beautiful place. But in July and August, it is over 110 degrees Fahrenheit.
Brutally hot.
It is brutally hot. If you own a week in Palm Springs in July, the trading power of that week is very, very low. No one is dying to swap their beachfront week in Hawaii for your week in the desert oven.
So you can't trade a bad week for a good week.
Right. You can't buy a cheap off-season week in a less desirable location and expect to trade it for Christmas in the Caribbean. Plus, you have to pay membership fees to RCI or 2 just to be in the system, and then you pay an exchange fee every time you successfully swap.
It seems like the recurring theme here is fees on top of fees.
That is the business model, plain and simple.
So given all of this, the pressure sales, the fees, the complexity, the scams, what protections actually exist for the consumer, if I get swept up in the moment and sign a contract, am I just trapped forever?
Thankfully, no. This is probably the most important legal concept for consumers to understand, the cooling off period.
How does it work?
In the U.S., the Federal Trade Commission mandates a cooling off period, and states have their own specific laws. In Florida, which is the hub of the industry, you have 10 days.
10 calendar days from when I sign.
Yes, you can cancel the contract for any reason or no reason at all within those 10 days and get a full refund. You usually have to do it in writing, certified mail, to prove you did it.
But the salespeople know this, right? Do they try to stop you?
They do. A common trick, which is completely illegal but still happens, is the waiver. They might say, if you sign this waiver giving up your cancellation rights, we will knock another $1,000 off the price.
Is that legal? Can you sign away your rights like that?
No. The source material is very clear on this. These waivers are not legally enforceable in the U.S. or Mexico. You cannot sign away your statutory right to a cooling off period. But they hope you don't know that.
And what about Mexico? A lot of Americans buy there on vacation.
Mexico actually has fairly robust regulations now, specifically a law called NOM 029 SCFI 2010.
Catchy name.
Very catchy. But it established important standards. It prohibits offering gifts without clearly specifying the real purpose, so they can't say, come for a free breakfast, without admitting it's a sales pitch.
That's a big one.
It is. It also protects privacy rights. And crucially, it sets penalties for non-compliance that can range from $50 up to $200,000.
So there is some teeth to the law, at least in theory.
There is. But enforcement is always the challenge, especially across borders.
So we've covered the history, the types, the sales, the scams, and the law. What does this all mean? How do we synthesize this whole complicated mess?
It's a paradox. That's really the best way to describe it. On one hand, the product, the actual room, the kitchen, the resort pool, is often great.
People have good vacations.
They do. Families love the vacations they take, and it forces you to take a vacation every year, which some people need.
Right, the forced relaxation argument.
Exactly. But the financial vehicle, the timeshare contract itself, is often terrible. It is a depreciating asset with perpetual liabilities and a very, very difficult exit.
The math lesson is key here. It's not just the purchase price. It's the liability of the maintenance fees for the rest of your life.
That's the takeaway. You aren't just buying a vacation, you are buying a bill that comes every January for the rest of your life and for your children's lives if you leave it to them.
So here is a final thought to chew on. We started with the story of the 4 families in Europe sharing a cottage based on trust.
The original sharing economy before the term existed.
Right. And now we live in the era of Airbnb and Vrbo, which is the modern digital version of that exact concept. So where does the timeshare fit now?
That is the provocative question, isn't it? The industry evolved from a model of trust to a model of complete mistrust, rigid contracts, strict regulations, aggressive sales, and layers of consumer protection because nobody trusts anybody in the transaction.
Yeah.
So in a world where you can rent a villa in Tuscany on your phone in 30 seconds with no long-term commitment, have timeshares become a legacy relic? Or does the guarantee of a standardized, high-quality room from a brand like Marriott still hold value in a world of uncertain vacation rentals where the pictures might not match reality?
It's the certainty versus flexibility debate.
It is, and the price of that certainty is a lifetime of maintenance fees.
Well, there you have it. If you are ever offered a free weekend in a luxury resort, just remember, read the fine print, check the resale market, and maybe, just maybe, keep your hands in your pockets. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.